The fire alarm screamed through the penthouse at 2:47 a.m., but I didn't move from my position at the window. Behind me, my husband Derek bolted upright in bed, his mistress, a 23-year-old intern from his firm, shrieking as she clutched the sheets. "What the hell?" Derek shouted, fumbling for his robe. I took another sip of my whiskey, watching the reflection of chaos in the glass. "False alarm," I said calmly. "Building maintenance is testing the system." "Jesus Christ, Natalie, you couldn't warn us?" He was pulling on pants now, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." The girl, I refused to learn her name, was crying, scrambling for her clothes. She thought this was about catching them. How quaint. "The door's unlocked," I told her without turning around. "Elevators to your left." She fled. Derek, however, stood there, weighing his options. Defiance won. "So what, you're just going to stand there judging me?" He sneered, that familiar contempt creeping into his voice. "At least I'm doing something with my life. At least I'm not some washed-up ex-programmer who couldn't hack it in tech." I finally turned to face him. "Is that what you tell people? That I washed out? What else would I call it?" He laughed, cruel and sharp. "You haven't worked in what, 5 years? You spend your days at yoga and those pathetic networking lunches with other desperate housewives. Meanwhile, I'm building something real. Whitmore and Associates is about to close the biggest merger in the firm's history." "The Helix acquisition," I said softly. His eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" "That's confidential." I smiled, setting down my glass. "Because Helix is mine, Derek. I'm not some washed-up programmer. I'm the CEO of the company that's about to devour yours whole." The color drained from his face. "Impossible. Helix is owned by—" He stopped, the pieces finally clicking into place. "N.K. Sterling. Natalie Catherine Sterling. But you're Natalie Whitmore now. You changed your name when we got married." "On paper," I corrected. "In business, I've always been N.K. Sterling. You just never bothered to ask what I did during those yoga sessions and desperate housewife lunches. For 5 years, I'd maintained the perfect facade. The dutiful wife who'd left her career to support her husband's ambitions. Who smiled at his colleagues' condescending questions about what I did with my time. Who endured his increasingly public mockery of my failed professional life. All while building a $90 million tech empire he'd been too arrogant to notice." "The Gala," Derek whispered. "Your keynote speech tomorrow night. Is at your firm's charity gala, yes. Where you've spent the last 3 weeks telling everyone I'll probably embarrass you with some amateur hour presentation about women in tech." I moved to the bar, pouring another drink. "Want to know what I'm actually announcing?" He said nothing, his jaw working soundlessly. "Helix is acquiring Whitmore and Associates. The contracts were signed yesterday. Your managing partners approved the deal unanimously. They're getting generous golden parachutes, after all. But junior partners like you?" I paused, savoring the moment. "Let's just say the new management has very different ideas about who brings value to the firm. You can't do this." His voice was barely a whisper. "I already have. The only question now is whether you walk into that gala tomorrow knowing what's coming, or whether you'd prefer the surprise. Either way, by midnight, you'll be unemployed, publicly humiliated, and—" I pulled a folder from my desk drawer, served with divorce papers citing adultery, emotional abuse, and financial fraud. Financial fraud? Now anger was replacing his shock. "I've never touched our money illegally." "No, but you've been systematically billing personal expenses to client accounts for 2 years. That vacation to Bali? Client entertainment. This penthouse's interior designer? Business development. Your mistress's tuition payments? I tossed the folder onto the bed, pages spilling across the sheets. Creative accounting at its finest. I'd hired forensic accountants 6 months ago when I first confirmed his affair. What they'd found was better than I'd hoped, a pattern of minor but consistent fraud that, when compiled, painted a picture of a man who thought he was clever enough to game the system. He wasn't. You've been planning this. Derek's voice was hollow now. How long? Since you told your mother I was too stupid to understand what you do for a living. That was, I pretended to calculate, 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days ago. Thanksgiving dinner. You laughed when she suggested I go back to school for something practical like teaching. I'd left that dinner, driven to my office downtown, the one Derek thought was a co-working space I rented for freelance projects, and made a decision. I would build something so substantial, so undeniable, that his mockery would become his epitaph. Helix started as a small consulting firm, I continued, moving back to the window. Dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. 3 employees, all women I'd mentored years ago in tech. They believed in me when I pitched them on creating a company that would fix the broken systems we'd all escaped. Derek had recovered enough to start pacing. This is insane. You can't just destroy my career because your feelings got hurt. Hurt feelings? I laughed, bitter and sharp. Derek, do you remember the dinner party last month? When your colleague asked what I did and you said I was between opportunities indefinitely? That was a joke. I had just closed a $12 million contract that afternoon. Helix's biggest deal to date, negotiated over 3 months with a Fortune 500 company. While you were making jokes about my unemployment, I was employing 47 people. Then why the hell didn't you say something? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. The truth tasted like ashes. I wanted to know if you'd ever ask. If you'd ever be curious about how I spent my time. If you'd ever look at me as anything other than an accessory to your success. The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of 5 years' worth of unspoken resentments. So this is revenge, he finally said. This whole thing is just, what, payback for hurt feelings? No. I turned to face him fully now. This is consequence. Helix acquiring Whitmore and Associates makes perfect business sense. Your firm has been hemorrhaging clients for 18 months, bad leadership, outdated practices, and a culture of exploitation that makes talented people flee. We're buying you because you're worth more gutted and rebuilt than you are standing. And me losing my job is a side effect of your own incompetence. Your billable hours are down 30% this year. Your client retention rate is the worst in the firm. You've survived this long because your name is on the letterhead, but now? The letterhead is changing. I watched him process this, saw the exact moment he pivoted from shock to calculation. Derek was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. He was already planning his counter-move. The prenup, he said. You made me sign that ironclad prenup before we married. Separate property, no alimony. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Which protects my assets, yes. Everything I built before and during our marriage stays mine. You get nothing from Helix or from me. But I get my stake in the firm. My partnership share is worth exactly what Helix decides it's worth in the acquisition. And since we're restructuring completely, eliminating redundant positions, and installing new management, I let the implication hang. His face went red. You're cutting me out completely. I'm offering you the same package the firm is offering all junior partners whose positions are being eliminated, 6 months severance and a recommendation letter. Given what I found in your expense reports, you should consider yourself lucky. I could have you disbarred. You wouldn't. Try me. I moved toward the bedroom door. Now get out. This penthouse, which you assumed we owned together, is actually owned by one of my shell companies. You've been living rent-free in my investment property. I want you gone before the movers arrive at noon. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Call your mistress. Call your mother. Call one of those colleagues who find your jokes about my unemployment so amusing. I opened the door. But do it from somewhere else. He stood there, struggling to salvage some dignity from the wreckage of his assumptions. This isn't over, Natalie. You're right, I agreed. It's not over until you sit in that audience tomorrow night and watch me give the keynote address about Helix's vision for the future, a future that includes acquiring and transforming struggling firms like yours. It's not over until your colleagues understand exactly who they've been dismissing at all those dinners. It's not over until everyone who laughed at your jokes knows the truth. You're going to humiliate me publicly. No, Derek. You're going to humiliate yourself. I'm just providing the stage. He left without another word, pulling on yesterday's clothes, his shoulders hunched with the weight of his new reality. I waited until I heard the elevator doors close before allowing myself to feel it, not triumph, not quite yet, but something darker and more satisfying. The first crack in a dam that had been holding back years of swallowed insults and forced smiles. My phone buzzed. A message from Victoria, my COO and closest confidant, saw the building alarm on security feed. You okay? I texted back, never better. Is everything set for tomorrow? Every detail. Press is confirmed, contracts are ready, and I've got the presentation loaded with all the surprises you requested. The surprises. I smiled, moving back to the window as the city woke up around me. The gala tomorrow wasn't just about announcing the acquisition. It was about revealing a pattern that extended far beyond Derek's personal mockery. Whitmore and Associates had a culture problem. For years, the firm had systematically undervalued women attorneys, passed them over for partnership, and created a hostile environment that drove away talent. The internal reports Victoria's team had compiled during due diligence were damning: dozens of settlements paid quietly to women who'd filed complaints, promotions withheld from qualified candidates, and a boys' club mentality that permeated every level of leadership. Derek was a symptom. Tomorrow night, I would expose the disease. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of final preparations. I spent the morning at Helix headquarters, a glass tower in the financial district that Derek had driven past 1,000 times without knowing I owned it, reviewing the presentation with Victoria. You sure about the nuclear option? Victoria asked, pulling up a slide that made my breath catch. Once you show this, there's no walking it back. The slide showed a network diagram of Whitmore and Associates' leadership structure, with red lines connecting partners to their various professional misconduct cases, settlements, and HR violations. Derek's name appeared 11 times. I'm sure, I said. People need to understand this isn't personal. This is about exposing a pattern of behavior that's cost careers, destroyed reputations, and created a toxic culture that's finally being held accountable. The media's going to eat this up. Good. Let them. Maybe it'll make other firms think twice before they dismiss the quiet women at their dinner parties. Victoria studied me with the frank assessment of someone who'd known me for 15 years. You're really going through with the divorce? Already filed. He'll be served tomorrow morning, right before the gala. Brutal timing. Efficient timing, I corrected. Why wait? The marriage was over the moment he decided I was too stupid to understand his work. It just took me a while to build an empire large enough to prove him wrong. She laughed, sharp and approving. Remind me never to piss you off. You've got nothing to worry about. I squeezed her shoulder. Your family. Always have been. Victoria had been my first hire at Helix, back when it was just the two of us working out of a coffee shop, pitching consulting services to startups that could barely afford us. She believed in my vision when I'd had nothing but rage and determination to fuel it. Now Helix had offices in 6 cities, 93 employees, and a client list that included some of the biggest names in tech. And tomorrow night, we'd add a prestigious law firm to our portfolio, gutted, restructured, and rebuilt in our image. Guest list is locked, Victoria said, pulling up another screen. 200 attendees, including Derek's entire firm, their major clients, and about 40 journalists who think they're here for a standard charity keynote. And Derek? Confirmed. Front row, center. Right where you wanted him. Perfect. I spent the afternoon in preparation of a different kind, a visit to my lawyer's office to finalize the divorce papers, then a stop at a boutique where I'd commissioned a custom dress for the evening. The designer, a woman I'd mentored early in her career, had outdone herself. The dress was the color of dried blood, structured like armor, with a neckline sharp enough to cut. When I put it on, I didn't see a victim. I saw a warrior. You look like you're about to end someone's entire existence, the designer said approvingly. That's the idea. My phone rang as I was leaving the boutique. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Mrs. Whitmore? A woman's voice, young and uncertain. Speaking. My name is Amanda Torres. I'm calling from Whitmore and Associates. I probably shouldn't be calling you at all, but I saw you're giving the keynote tomorrow and I needed to warn you. I stopped walking, moving into the shade of a building. Warn me about what? Your husband and some of the other partners, they're planning something. I overheard them this morning talking about disrupting your speech. Making you look incompetent in front of everyone. I don't know the details, but they seemed really confident it would work. My mind raced. Why are you telling me this? A long pause. Because 3 months ago, Derek sexually harassed me at a firm retreat. When I reported it to HR, they offered me a settlement to leave quietly. I took it because I needed the money and I was scared. But then I found out I was the 7th woman to settle with the firm over similar complaints, and most of them involved the same partners who are planning to sabotage you tomorrow. Amanda, I said carefully, what if I told you that you don't have to stay quiet? What if I told you that tomorrow night, things are going to change at Whitmore and Associates? I'd say I wish I could believe that. But men like Derek always win. They always find a way. Not this time. I made a decision. Amanda, can you meet me at Helix headquarters in an hour? I want to show you something. And I want to offer you a job. A job? Helix is acquiring Whitmore and Associates. The announcement goes live tomorrow night. We're planning a complete restructuring, and I need people who understand the culture we're trying to fix. People who've lived through it. Silence. Then, you're serious. Completely. 1 hour. I'll have security expecting you. When I hung up, Victoria was texting me, just got intel from our inside source. Derek's planning something for tomorrow. Heads up. I texted back, already know. Let him try. It'll only make the finale sweeter. Amanda Torres arrived at Helix headquarters exactly 1 hour later, clutching her purse like a shield. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 26, with sharp eyes that had seen too much too soon. Thank you for coming, I said, gesturing to a chair in my office. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine. She sat on the edge of the seat. I still can't believe you're Derek's wife. He never mentioned that I work. No, he wouldn't. In his version of our marriage, I'm a failed programmer who spends her days lunching and doing yoga. Her eyes widened. But you run this whole company. I do. And tomorrow night, I'm going to acquire his. But that's not why I asked you here. I pulled up a file on my computer. During our due diligence on Whitmore and Associates, We uncovered a pattern of sexual harassment, discrimination, and hostile workplace behavior spanning more than a decade. Settlements paid. Complaints buried. Women driven out of the profession entirely. I turned the screen to face her. Your case was number 43. There were 42 before you, Amanda. 42 women who were told to stay quiet, take the money, and disappear. Tears welled in her eyes. I thought I was the only one. That's what they count on. Isolation. Shame. The belief that speaking up will cost you more than staying silent. I leaned forward. But tomorrow night, I'm burning that playbook to the ground. And I want to give all 43 of you the chance to tell your stories. Publicly. With legal protection and financial support. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. Why would you do this? Because I spent 5 years being dismissed, mocked, and treated like I was too stupid to understand the world around me. Because Derek and his colleagues represent everything wrong with corporate culture. And because I have the power to do something about it, which means I have the responsibility to do something about it. I pulled out a contract. Helix is creating a new division focused on corporate culture transformation. We help companies identify and fix toxic workplace dynamics before they become legal nightmares. I want you to lead it. Starting salary is $150,000, full benefits, and equity in the company. Amanda stared at the contract like it might bite her. This is real. Completely real. Think of it as reparations for what Whitmore and Associates took from you. And a chance to prevent it from happening to others. She picked up the pen, hesitated, then signed with firm, decisive strokes. When do I start? Tomorrow night. I want you in the audience when I make the announcement. I want Derek and every partner in that firm to see you there, employed, valued, and unafraid. Her smile was fierce. I wouldn't miss it for the world. After Amanda left, Victoria appeared in my doorway with a bottle of scotch and 2 glasses. You're collecting employees like Pokemon now? I'm building something, I corrected, accepting a glass. Something Derek couldn't destroy even if he tried. Speaking of which, our inside source confirms the sabotage plan. They're going to challenge your credentials during the Q&A, imply you're not qualified to speak on tech leadership. Make you look like a fraud in front of the press. Let them try. I raised my glass. By the time I'm done, the only frauds in that room will be wearing Whitmore and Associates name tags. We drank to that. The night before the gala, I barely slept. Not from nerves, I'd rehearsed this presentation 100 times, knew every word, every pause, every devastating revelation. But from anticipation. From the knowledge that tomorrow, everything would change. At dawn, I received a text from Derek, we need to talk. Please. Before this gets worse. I didn't respond. At 8 a.m., a process server arrived at the hotel where Derek was staying. I'd had him followed, of course, and handed him divorce papers. My lawyer texted me a photo, Derek, in a hotel bathrobe, staring at the documents with the expression of a man watching his life collapse in real time. At noon, I arrived at the Gala venue, a historic ballroom downtown, all crystal chandeliers and marble columns, to do a final tech check. The stage was set. The screen was perfect. The surprise waiting in the wings was ready. At 5 p.m., I returned to my penthouse to dress. The red dress fit like a second skin, armor and weapon combined. I pulled my hair back severe and sharp, applied makeup like war paint, and studied my reflection. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. I was ready. The ballroom glittered with wealth and influence, 200 of the city's most powerful people sipping champagne and networking while a string quartet played classical arrangements in the corner. I arrived fashionably late, making an entrance that turned heads and stopped conversations. Derek was exactly where Victoria had promised, front row, center, flanked by his partners and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Our eyes met across the room. He looked away first. Good. I worked the crowd efficiently, greeting clients and colleagues with the easy confidence of someone who'd been doing this for years. Because I had been. Just not where anyone could see. Natalie. A voice called out. Derek's senior partner, Graham Whitmore himself, approached with that practiced charm that made him dangerous. So wonderful to see you. Derek's told us so much about your interests. I understand you're giving tonight's keynote. That's right, I said smoothly. I hope it lives up to expectations. I'm sure it will be educational. The condescension dripped like poison. This was a man who'd paid 43 women to disappear rather than fix his firm's culture. Derek mentioned you have experience in tech. Some, I allowed. I've been involved in the industry for about 15 years now. How nice. Consulting work? Something like that. He smiled, patting my arm like I was a child. Well, we're all looking forward to hearing your perspective. It's so important to have diverse voices, even when they lack traditional credentials. I smiled back, showing teeth. I couldn't agree more. Credentials are so often just gatekeeping disguised as merit. The lights dimmed. Showtime. I made my way to the stage, feeling the weight of 200 pairs of eyes. Derek sat rigid in his seat, his jaw clenched. Amanda Torres was 3 rows back, wearing the fierce expression of someone about to watch justice served. The moderator, a business journalist from the city's major newspaper, introduced me with a brief bio that mentioned my marriage to Derek but nothing about Helix. By design. I'd kept my professional identity carefully separated. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began, my voice carrying easily through the sound system. I'm Natalie Whitmore, though some of you know me better as Derek's wife. The woman who couldn't understand what her husband did for a living. The failed programmer who washed out of tech. The unemployed housewife with nothing better to do than yoga and lunch. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Derek had gone pale. Tonight, I want to talk about perception versus reality. About the stories we tell about people, especially women, and what those stories cost us. I clicked to the first slide. The Helix logo filled the screen. For the past 5 years, while being mocked and dismissed at dinner parties, I've been building a technology company called Helix. We started with 3 employees and a mission to fix broken systems. Today, we employ 93 people across 6 cities, generate $90 million in annual revenue, and work with Fortune 500 companies to transform their operations. The room had gone silent. Victoria, standing in the wings, gave me a thumbs up. Some of you are doing the math right now, I continued. Wondering how Derek's unemployable wife could possibly run a $90 million company. The answer is simple, he never asked. In 5 years of marriage, he never once asked what I did with my time, what I was working on, or what my goals were. He simply assumed I'd failed and moved on. Derek was standing now, his face red. This is. Sit down, I said softly, but the microphone carried my voice through the room like a command. Or leave. Those are your only options. He sat. Tonight, I'm announcing that Helix has acquired Whitmore and Associates. The contracts were signed yesterday. As of midnight tomorrow, every partner in this room will answer to new management. Management that has very different ideas about accountability, culture, and who deserves a seat at the table. The ballroom erupted. Journalists scrambled for their phones. Partners at Whitmore and Associates looked between each other in shock and horror. Graham Whitmore had gone from smug to apoplectic in seconds. But I wasn't done. During our due diligence, we uncovered something troubling, a pattern of sexual harassment, discrimination, and workplace abuse spanning more than a decade. 43 women paid settlements to stay silent. Countless others driven from the profession entirely. All to protect a culture that valued reputation over justice. I clicked to the next slide, the network diagram Victoria had prepared, showing every partner connected to their misconduct cases. Derek's name blazed in red, connected to 11 different incidents. This isn't about revenge, I said, looking directly at Derek. This is about consequence. This is about building something better from the ruins of something rotten. And this is about giving voice to the women who were silenced. I gestured to the wings. Ladies, if you'd join me. Amanda Torres walked out first, followed by 6 other women, all former Whitmore and Associates employees, all survivors of the firm's toxic culture, all newly hired by Helix. They lined up beside me, a united front of the dismissed and discarded. These women are the future of Whitmore and Associates, I announced. They're going to help us rebuild the firm into something worthy of respect. Something that doesn't sacrifice people to protect power. The applause started slowly, then built like thunder. Not from everyone, the Whitmore partners sat frozen, understanding that their world had just ended, but from enough. From the women in the audience who'd survived similar cultures. From the younger associates who'd witnessed the abuse. From the journalists who could smell blood in the water. Derek tried one last time. He stood, his voice shaking. You can't do this. This is slander. This is documented fact, I interrupted. Every settlement, every complaint, every violation is backed by legal records that will be provided to the press after this event. You're welcome to sue me for slander, Derek. Discovery should be fascinating. He looked around the room, searching for allies. He found none. Even Graham Whitmore had abandoned him, already calculating his own survival. The gala will continue, I said, wrapping up. Please enjoy your evening, support the charity we're here to celebrate, and know that tomorrow, we begin the work of transformation. Real transformation. The kind that requires accountability, humility, and the courage to admit when systems are broken. I left the stage to a standing ovation that felt like vindication and thunder combined. The aftermath hit like a tsunami. I retreated to a private room off the ballroom where Victoria had set up our war room, laptops displaying real-time social media feeds, news alerts, and internal communications from Whitmore and Associates as their world collapsed in real time. It's trending nationwide, Victoria reported, her fingers flying across her keyboard. Hashtag Helix acquisition is #1. The 43 settlement story is going viral. We're getting interview requests from every major outlet. Amanda stood beside me, watching the feeds with wide eyes. They're destroying him. Derek's being absolutely destroyed online. She was right. Twitter was brutal. LinkedIn was worse. Former colleagues were publicly distancing themselves. Women were sharing their own stories of dismissal and mockery. The narrative had shifted from corporate acquisition to cultural reckoning in under an hour. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I ignored most of it until I saw my lawyer's name. Derek's attorney just called, she said when I answered. He wants to negotiate the divorce settlement. They're willing to walk away from everything if you'll sign an NDA about tonight. I laughed, cold and sharp. Tell them no. The truth isn't for sale. That's what I told them. Also, 3 more partners from Whitmore and Associates have resigned in the last 20 minutes. Graham Whitmore is trying to reach you directly. Block him. He had a decade to fix his firm's culture and chose profit over people. He doesn't get to negotiate now. Through the window overlooking the ballroom, I could see Derek standing alone near the bar, staring at his phone. His colleagues had abandoned him. His mentors had vanished. Even the journalists had moved on to interview the women I'd brought on stage. He looked up suddenly, his eyes meeting mine through the glass. For a moment, I saw something that might have been regret. Or maybe just the realization that he'd gambled everything on my silence and lost. I turned away. We need to talk about the transition plan, Victoria said, pulling up documents on the main screen. Whitmore and Associates has 36 partners, 72 associates, and 140 support staff. We've already identified 23 people who need to go immediately based on documented misconduct. Another 15 are under review. And the rest? Most are clean. Good lawyers who've been working in a toxic system. They deserve a chance to thrive under better leadership. Amanda stepped forward. What about the clients? Some of them might not want to work with a firm under new management. Then they can leave, I said simply. We're not building Helix's reputation by compromising our values. Any client who has a problem with accountability isn't a client we want. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, my mother. I'm watching the live stream, she said when I answered. Sweetheart, you're magnificent. Your father would be so proud. My throat tightened. Dad had died 3 years ago, right before I started Helix. He'd spent his career fighting for workers' rights, challenging powerful institutions, refusing to stay silent when silence was profitable. Everything I'd done tonight had been built on his foundation. I wish he could see this, I managed. He can, Mom said firmly. And he's probably laughing at Derek's face right now. That man never deserved you. We talked for a few more minutes before she had to go. When I hung up, I found Victoria watching me with a knowing expression. You okay? She asked quietly. Better than okay. I straightened, rolling my shoulders back. Let's finish this. 48 hours after the gala, the transformation was complete. Graham Whitmore had resigned, taking a generous severance package in exchange for his silence and cooperation. 16 partners had been terminated for cause, their misconduct files provided to the state bar for review. Derek had moved out of the city entirely, fleeing to his brother's house in Portland after his legal options evaporated. The divorce was finalized with brutal efficiency. He got nothing. The prenup I'd insisted on years ago protected every asset I'd built. The penthouse, the cars, the investment accounts, all mine. He left with his clothes and his shame. Helix's acquisition of Whitmore and Associates, now renamed Sterling Legal Group, was complete. Amanda Torres had assembled a team of 15 women to lead the Culture Transformation Division. Former associates who'd been overlooked for partnership were promoted. New policies on harassment, discrimination, and accountability were implemented immediately. The media coverage had been overwhelming but overwhelmingly positive. I'd given exactly 3 interviews, each carefully calculated to focus on systemic change rather than personal revenge. The message was clear: this wasn't about one woman's vendetta. It was about holding power accountable. I stood in my office, my real office, the one I no longer had to hide, looking out over the city as the sun set. Victoria joined me with 2 glasses of champagne. To burning it all down and building something better, she toasted. To consequences, I countered, clinking my glass against hers. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number: you destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. Derek. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed my response: I didn't destroy your life. I removed your ability to destroy others. There's a difference. I blocked the number and deleted the message. Any regrets? Victoria asked, reading my expression. I thought about the last 5 years. The silent dinners where Derek mocked my intelligence. The parties where his colleagues treated me like a decorative object. The slow erosion of self-worth that came from being perpetually dismissed and underestimated. Then I thought about the 43 women who could finally tell their stories. The employees at Sterling Legal Group who would work in an environment that valued them. The cultural shift that was rippling through the industry as other firms scrambled to audit their own practices. None, I said firmly. Not a single one. 6 months later, I received an invitation to speak at a tech conference about building companies that prioritize culture alongside profit. The keynote stage felt familiar now. I'd given dozens of speeches since the gala, each one refining my message about accountability and transformation. But this one was different. In the front rows sat 20 women, all former victims of workplace harassment, all now employed in leadership positions at companies across the industry. Amanda Torres was there, having become a sought-after consultant on culture change. 3 were running their own firms. 1 had started a non-profit supporting women in male-dominated fields. Derek wasn't there. He disappeared from public life entirely, last I heard working in some small firm in a different state under a different name. His legal career was over. His reputation was permanently destroyed. The consequences he'd spent years avoiding had finally caught up with him. I didn't feel triumph anymore. Just a quiet satisfaction that the world was marginally better than it had been. 5 years ago, I began, my voice carrying across the auditorium. I was told I was too stupid to understand my husband's work. Too unambitious to build anything meaningful. Too invisible to matter. Tonight, I want to talk about the power of being underestimated. The speech wasn't about revenge. It was about resilience. About the women who'd been dismissed, discarded, and told they didn't belong, but who'd built empires anyway. About the importance of documentation, strategic planning, and choosing your moment carefully. About making sure that when you finally speak, everyone has to listen. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. But the real victory came afterward, when a young woman approached me nervously. "My boss doesn't take me seriously," she said quietly. "He makes jokes about my work in front of clients. I've been thinking about quitting." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw myself 5 years ago. Angry, determined, and ready to prove everyone wrong. "Don't quit," I said. "Build something so undeniable they can't ignore it. Document everything. Find your allies. And when you're ready, burn it all down and build something better." She nodded, something fierce lighting up in her eyes. I gave her my card. "If you need help, call me. Helix is always looking for talented people." As I walked out of the conference center that night, Victoria fell into step beside me. "Another recruit?" she asked, amused. "Another survivor," I corrected. "And maybe, eventually, another CEO who's going to change the world." My phone buzzed with a notification. Sterling Legal Group had just closed its biggest client contract yet. The restructured firm was thriving, profitable, and building a reputation as the most ethical practice in the city. Graham Whitmore's old firm was fading into history. Derek's legacy was a cautionary tale. The toxic culture they'd built had been dismantled and rebuilt into something that actually worked. I smiled, sliding my phone back into my pocket. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about transformation. About taking everything they said you couldn't do and doing it so well they could never deny it again. Derek had mocked my failed career. So I'd built an empire, acquired his firm, and used my success to dismantle the systems that had protected men like him for too long. He'd wanted me to stay small, quiet, and invisible. Instead, I'd become undeniable. And that, ultimately, was the sweetest revenge of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.